hello, and today we are going to be talking about Handel's Bel Piacere. So, let's get into it. Alright, so for this one, I really wanted to kind of start with kind of like the not the vaguest, but the broadest in terms of the music. So we're going to be talking a little bit about the Baroque period, and then after that, the composer himself, and then of course the opera, and so on and so forth. So kind of like a Russian doll, just getting bigger, and then just shrink, shrink, shrink until finally the golden prize. So let's go ahead and get into it. Now, one thing to note about the Baroque period is that it was a time of musical experimentation. This was really the start of melismas, and it was more grander type music to where it was both choir and orchestra, and it had more of a sophistication to it almost. And one thing that is also important to note is that this was also during the time when operas were first starting to really make a comeback, because at first they were kind of a little bit of a thing during the Greek times, and then they kind of died off from there. But then they started making a comeback during the 17th century, during this Baroque period. So it's really made a resurgence during this time. And actually, opera is actually Italian for work, so that's also important to keep in mind. Also, this was also a time where they used recitatives, which a recitative is something where it kind of takes text of the piece takes more of a priority over the actual music. So that's another thing that's really important to keep in mind, especially for this piece. So let's go ahead and talk about the composer himself, George Frederick Handel, who was born in March 5th at the time of the Pisces. And he wrote his first musical when he was only 19, and even then it was incredibly successful during that time. During Throughout his life, he's even between his death, between when he first started writing music to even to now, he's always been one of the most well-renowned, most celebrated musicians ever. And because of how good he was at his job, he knew so many politicians, including like kings and rulers. And so even now, his music is still one of the most worshipped and most celebrated pieces of all time, including this piece himself, Bel Piacere. So let's go ahead and get talking about the opera Agrippina. So one thing to keep in mind about Handel operas in general is that they can definitely be a little messy. And what I mean by that is they can be a little bit complicated and sometimes, honestly, a little bit confusing. And there's so many storylines like connected and intertwined all within the music. And one of the main storylines for Agrippina that Handel focuses on is the story of Claudius and Agrippina, who are the emperor and empress of ancient Roman times. So, and this is actually based on a true story as well. During this time, this was when the opera takes place. This is when he had Claudius had just died, and many people had actually accused the Empress Agrippina of killing him in order to gain power. So, so that's about what Agrippina is about. And you're probably wondering, well, when does Bel Piacere come in? When does that come in? And actually, that piece doesn't quite come in until the very last act of the opera, which is actually the third act, because back then, if instead of being just a two-act, what we have now in Broadway musicals, for operas, it took more so in place of three acts, beginning, which I guess you could say, is kind of, beginning, middle, end of it. So, but, anyway, so this, for Bel Piacere, it was actually, wasn't sung by Agrippina herself. This was actually sung by Popina, who is one of Claudius's mistresses, and her storyline is just as complicated as you would think. Instead of it being a typical kind of love triangle, like in Twilight with Bella and Jacob and Edward, instead she has a little bit more of like a love rhombus going on, where it's her, Claudius, and two other soldiers named Atone and Nero, and and she is just causing all this drama and all of this kind of basically just drama just happening, and just trying to figure out who does she love, who actually loves her, and by the time she gets to the third act, she finally realizes, oh, well, I think Atone actually I love Atone, and Bel Piacere is her declaring her love for him. So, um, and you really see that in the music for this piece. One thing that definitely focuses on is definitely the repetition of the text. The very first phrase of the piece is called Bel Piacere Ego delle Fidolo Amor, which translates to nice pleasure and faith and enjoy faithful love. And she repeats this phrase over and over from the very beginning. She repeats it twice, and then after the B phrase, she also repeats it again. And so she's really trying to solidify with Atone, I really love you. My feelings are true. Let's enjoy our love together. So, and then there's another thing that you'll notice, which you'll see also in the next slide with my visual musical example, is it switches time signatures a lot. It goes back and forth between 2/4 and 3/8 time, or excuse me, 3/8 and 2/4 time. And you're probably wondering, well, what exactly was the point of that? Why would Handel feel the need to go back and forth? And it left me wondering that as well. And I came to the conclusion, and it was actually a late night realization that this was probably actually reflective of Papia's storyline in general, because throughout the whole story, she keeps going back and forth between three guys, and then two, and then her and the other guy, and then three, just back and forth, just this love rhombus of these three men that she loves, or who want her sexually. And then by the end of it, she's like, well, I don't need these three guys, I just need one guy. So it really just goes back and forth between, so it really just symbolizes how she feels about these men throughout the story, and what she came to the ultimate conclusion of by the end of it. And so, and you'll see here, I'm gonna scoot up, there we go. So you'll see in the, right about here in this area, where it switches back and forth a lot between 2/4 and 3/8. And you can even see, like, at the bottom of here, there's an area where it actually goes, like, from bottom, top of note, bottom, top of note, where it keeps going back and forth. And I believe that also symbolizes part of her struggle, of her trying to find who really loves her, who does she want to spend her life with, and really what her storyline is all about. So with that being said, let's go ahead. I'm gonna flip it like I actually know what I'm doing. Oh, there we go. So we're gonna do an audio example of this piece. It'll pop up. There we go. Okay, took a second. All right, we're just gonna and turn it. I'm gonna repeat it first. Back and forth, and then her repeating the phrase again. So all, and let's close that out. So, overall, she certainly has her struggles, and sorry, there we go. Okay, so she definitely has her. I think the music definitely portrays her struggles very well in terms of like musically and rhythmically and all that. And of course, here are all my sources if you're interested in looking at those. And that is about it. Thank you so much for watching this. I really hope you appreciated it, and I hope you learned a little bit about Bel Piacere and also a little bit about Handel. So, hope you have a good day.